Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Beyond the Bulletin.
We're on.
My name is Mike Gomer Gormley, and I'm joined, as always, by my co-host,
Stephen the Man Lenihan.
Stephen Theman Lenihan.
What?
Theman.
Don't roll your eyes, guest.
The man. When I was a little kid, I had a video game that we played on an old Commodore 64, and I wanted to put my name was The Man, but it didn't allow for space bars. It didn't recognize that character, so it was Theman.
Fair enough.
Stephen Theman.
Well, I've always said that if I ever had a reason to run out of a tunnel or something to that effect, it's never really happened in life yet.
Like break through a banner?
Yeah, something like that.
And then they forget to pre-cut the banner.
Actually, I think
and
it did happen. I think one time in high school, I played basketball in high school, and I think one time one of the announcers introduced me that way. They're like, Stephen the Man Lenihan, and I loved it. I was like, this is it. This is me.
That is awesome. I was homeschooled, so I never had
no
any
humility
of that
here.
stuff. And I'm just sad and lonely.
But you are literally known across the country as Gomer. So I'm not known across the country as Stephen the Man Lenihan.
You're not even known as Stephen Lenihan.
Oh.
And speaking of which, we have a guest today. We have a special guest today. Stephen, since you are so well-versed and you are the man, why don't you introduce our guest?
Well, actually, I was going to have you introduce her because you've known her longer than me.
Have I?
Yeah.
Were we buds? I don't think we were buds.
No.
You were just that lady in the background judging me when I was a youth ministering her kids.
That was me.
All right, fine. I'll introduce her. So we are joined by, I don't even know. I need an adjective.
The man.
No, I was not going to go there.
No.
The intelligent, the illustrious. Is that
Illustrious.
a word? Illustrious. Radiant.
Better half.
Marion. Holy, vibrant,
Vital,
Mrs. Katie Krall. All right, so
That's a lot to live up to.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Also, she is a deaconess, as some people call it, which is not really a
No.
thing.
The
Needed.
unfortunate burden of being married to one Deacon Mike Krall.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
How you been shouldering that burden?
How
How long have y'all been married?
20. Golly, how long? 27 this year. 27 years.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Congrats.
So thank you.
Your marriage can now get a reduced rate on car liability insurance when you get a rental car. That's great.
I had no.
That's the
idea.
only thing. Like 25, 27,
That's
something like
25, I
Dang
think.
it.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
that. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
There you
But
go.
they've been getting
Okay.
that since they were 25. It has nothing to do with your marriage.
Dang it.
You just tried to personify their marriage. That was weird. It's a stretch.
So you've
Okay.
been. So how long has he been a deacon? Is he on 3 years now? I don't know
Oh,
why my
gosh.
voice went so
No.
high pitched.
No. He just over a year.
Just over a year. Gosh, it
So-
seems like 3.
Class of 2019. Wow.
Right.
Yeah. Maybe
Yeah.
for him too. I don't know. No, he's ordained last year, and I think we had a lot of expectations going in. There were people that came in and talked to us and warned us it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard. Just prepare yourself. It's going to be hard. And then it wasn't quite as hard as
Really?
Well,
That's
at
so
least-
funny.
No, it's because we locked down the church for 3 months.
well. That's true.
You want it to be difficult? You know what? You can't meet with anyone. How about that? You're going to give
There you
homilies
go.
to an empty church. How about that?
Exactly. It has eased up quite a bit. So at first, though, I think everybody was being kind of nice at first. And so he eased in, and then the summer came, and that was kind of easy. And then the fall came, and we realized you have overcommitted.
Yeah.
And so then we're like, whoo, okay, reevaluate. And so
Yeah.
we kind of got in the groove. But, we had been really heavily involved in ministry all of our time here. So it wasn't that much of a change as far as, if you're up here doing something for church every day.
Yeah.
Being a deacon or being,
You might as well get
ministry.
ordained to do it.
I mean, really.
Might as well. Just
Then you
hang
get a
out.
key.
Yeah. So it's, and I think a lot of people don't know that deacons really are volunteers. They're not,
Right.
they may be clergy, but they're not like priests. They're not on staff. They're not paid. They're volunteers. So
Right.
it's,
Yeah.
it is a lot like being in ministry. It's just kind of, you have some obedience and other little things you have to agree to. But yeah, so it was a lot better than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
And we have had a few things where we're like, okay, that's not going to work. And
Mm.
we're going to have to look at the calendar a little bit more.
So
Yeah.
tell us about like when did Mike come to you? Did you come to him and say, "Hey, I think you should be a deacon"? Or like, what did that early discernment process look
Yeah.
like for y'all as a couple? Or was it someone prompting him, other than the Holy Spirit, obviously? But
Oh, I'm the Holy Spirit. You should be a deacon. That's the Holy Ghost.
I was
That's the
going to
Holy
say that
Ghost.
really
Was
sounded
it?
a lot like
Oh,
very, very
you
Catholic.
meddling kids.
Isn't there something about not blaspheming the Holy Spirit? Isn't that like the only
Used
unforgivable
to be
sin?
the Holy
Fair enough.
Ghost, right?
Well played.
Okay. Anyway, okay, so I think that Mike really had it in the back of his mind that he was always interested in being a deacon. So even when we were first married, we were in as we often do, in a Catholic bookstore.
Nerds. Sorry,
Yeah,
just kidding.
seriously. Yeah, as I was I was in your office once looking at the bookshelf, just going, yeah, I own that. I have that.
Mhm.
I've never read that, but I have it.
Yeah.
He's
Read
the-
it. I own it.
He's the
Yeah.
extreme nerd. So.
Yeah. So anyway, so we were in a Catholic bookstore and picked up a little brochure, pamphlet on how to be a deacon.
So you're thinking about being a deacon.
Yeah, really. And he was probably, I don't know, he was mid-20s at the time. And so you open it up and it says you need to be 35. So we're like, okay, maybe an idea for later. We bought the book. We still have the little book. And so, and then I think, so that idea was kind of planted, but he didn't do anything about it. And I don't know if I get the story right. I think it was Deacon Tom that approached him and just said, hey, there's this information night. You maybe want to go down and check it out. And so he's like, okay. And he said, you want to go to the information night? Wives have to go. I was like, sure. We're not doing this.
Yeah.
And then we went to the information night and then they said, okay, come back next month because we want you to get used to coming down here. And then, now we want you to commit. It was a few months.
Yeah.
And he's like, I think we should do this. And I was like, you're out of your ever loving mind. I was like, at the time I had I don't know how old Emily was, our youngest, 8, something like that. I was just like, this is crazy.
Because it's monthly that you have to go. Right?
Monthly that I have to go. And then, I'll get back to that. But yeah, so he said, look, let's start it because it's an ongoing process. And they told us that from the beginning. It's a discernment process from the first moment.
Right.
So at any time you say, we're not feeling the pull, you stop.
Or vice versa. The church can say the same thing.
Absolutely.
Like, you're not called to this.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the first 2 years of it too are just kind of like a preliminary, it's just like going to classes. You're not accepted. You have to apply and go through. So it's like if after 2 years you're said, thanks, but no thanks, hey, I've been educated and I will go on my merry way. But anyway, so I said, okay, we can do this. That's fine. If we can say no at some point. And then it just became, we'll go down there every month for when the wives and the husbands both have to be there. But they said the wives can join for the classes as well. And so I thought, do I want to go down there every week? I'm homeschooling at the time, 4 children?
Oh my gosh.
I can't even remember now. Maybe only
4,
3.
maybe 12. I don't know. One loses track.
The fog of war.
I can't remember how many were still at home. So anyway, I was just like, okay, he cannot go get smarter than I am.
No.
So that's just not going to work at all.
So it
That
became
is
a competition.
It did.
Yeah.
And I just told him, I was like,
Oh my gosh. Did you guys compete on grades?
Oh, yeah.
That makes my heart so happy. Me and my wife did too. That
Okay,
makes
I
my
just want to
heart
say that
so happy.
he's like super smart. It's really pitiful. And so he did beat me on all grades except for philosophy.
Nice.
Yes.
Well,
And that's
philosophy,
because
philosophy is really hard.
Beautiful.
No.
It's magical.
It's way hard, but I bought a book that has pictures and cartoons. I'm not kidding.
Homer
That's funny.
Simpson's Guide to
do you know-
Philosophy.
I ditched the textbook that the professor had, and I was like, this ain't working for me.
Yeah.
It's like,
There was a girl at Franciscan when I took philosophy who, thank God for her, because she's the only reason I passed, but she was a chain smoker. And I had to stay up till
Most philosophers are.
Right, yeah. And then she was a philosophy major.
Yeah.
So I had to stay up till like 2 a.m. I'll never forget, like sitting outside.
She
on
probably
the
wore a
picnic
fedora
table.
too.
No, she was a little. She wasn't like that. But yeah, I had to sit there and endure secondhand smoke to get through the final for this philosophy course that I had to take.
That's so fun. For my wife, she was a grad student when I met her at Franciscan. And you have to take, if you're grad theology, you have to have all these philosophy prereqs. Well, I was a philosophy theology undergrad because I thought I was going to be a priest. So I wanted to have at least my philosophy done when I go off to become a priest. Well, then we start dating, whoopsie. And her and all of her friends, they were all, they had never taken philosophy before. I think she had done maybe one class. But I said, I will teach you. I will go through your whole study guide. I said, but you all have to agree you're doing it my way. And they were like, okay.
Boy, where have I heard that before? Sorry, go on.
Yeah,
Sounds familiar.
it was your wedding vows. I'll agree to this, Stephen, but you're doing it my way. Okay.
I'm in it like inner office.
Oh yeah, no, that's true.
But okay, whatever.
I made it a marriage joke. You made it an office joke together. No, so I go into her kitchen and I drag her kitchen table into the family room. And I said, no one is allowed to have books in a lap because you're only half paying attention. And I made them all, and we studied straight till 3 o'clock in the morning. Half the group left. The rest of us plowed through till 5 a.m. Then they left. Then I left. And they took their test at 8 a.m. And they all got A's. Every one of them. Some of them were failing. So I'm
That's
amazing.
impressive.
It's the moral of that story.
Wow, I love it. We should rename this the Gomer Show.
I think we should. I think all of our fans would be in favor of that.
So really
Team
quick,
Gomer.
So my in-laws actually went through the diaconate process in the Diocese of Birmingham, and they were ordained my father-in-law was ordained the same spring as Deacon Mike.
Okay.
And so it's always interesting hearing my mother-in-law, who's very different personality than you, but I think y'all get along great. And in kind of her perspective, I think that the discernment process and the going to classes or whatever once a month, she hated it. That was like, and I don't know if she'll see this, but she just didn't. She was like not interested in that. She wanted to be doing other things, but she supported her husband,
nice,
and kind of everything. So that's the beautiful lesson there, I guess, that I've learned is a support for one's spouse. But was there ever a moment in the process where you're like, I don't think this is the right thing for us, other than just like, a few scheduling things here and there?
I don't think there was a serious moment. I mean, there were moments along the way where I'm just like, I don't know how we're going to do this.
Yeah.
I mean, just logistical issues that usually disappeared within a week or so.
Right.
You have sick kids or, whatever things in day-to-day life come up. And you start to think, how are we going to manage this? But it really, I mean, we were really, I don't know, Holy Spirit was watching out for us because it just worked out. I mean, It turned out that doing those classes while our kids were still at home, we had enough older kids still around to help with the younger kids. Like if we had tried to do it now, then our poor youngest would be home all the time by herself, basically.
Right.
And because everybody else is kind of in and out. And so they were still, we'd come home and we'd be gone all day Saturday for a formation day. And we'd come home and I'm just like, Mike, they've been there all day. And I feel like such a terrible parent, even though I'm homeschooling, I'm with them all the time. It's so silly. But I'm like, we're just gone. And we would go down there and go to our classes all day. And then we go out to dinner. And so we'd come home pretty, late. And I just remember one weekend coming home and it must have been spring break and our son was back. And we walked in and they were all sitting on the floor, like the college student down to the little kid playing a game together.
Yeah.
Just playing a board game. And I was like, okay, Lord.
Well,
I'm sorry, I doubt it.
Oh, you're here?
That's because also you may not feel this way, but like your oldest son is like the holiest guy of his age I've ever met. Like when because I was his youth minister for a few years.
Right.
And I remember he'd walk in the room. I'm like, he could probably educate me on whatever we're going to talk about right now. So it doesn't surprise me that he was able to rally them around when he was in the room. That's awesome. So what's one thing that we should all know about Deacon Mike?
Yes.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
And it needs to be funny.
Put me on the spot.
I know.
You should have prepped me.
No, then it wouldn't be real and authentic.
I don't know. What should you know about
Okay,
Deacon
maybe we should get more specific. We'll
Yeah.
start. We'll ease into it.
Mike? Okay.
What's a terrible secret that he's been guarding for 27
No,
years?
what's his favorite meal? Or type of food?
Probably seafood.
Yeah.
Anything
gross.
that swims.
All
gross.
right, I'm with him
He'll
on that.
pretty much
Well,
eat
strike
anything
one.
that swims.
What?
I hate seafood.
Yeah, we know you're on
Really?
the corner. You're on the carnivore.
I'm
Carnivore.
a
diet?
carnivore.
You're a
I eat only
carnivore.
corn. Candy corns, corn on the
That's
cob.
That'd be an interesting diet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Next question. We're gonna up the
here we
ante a
go.
little bit.
I see that
Heavens.
look in his eye.
Yeah. Best date he ever took you on.
These are hard.
Dinner after seminary.
Really, honestly, okay, you joke,
I do.
but
And with friends.
but it was great because those days when we had formation days, they were half of it was kind of like a class and half of it is a reflection of
Yeah.
sorts. So it's like kind of like a mini retreat.
Mhm.
And there were some months where I'm like kicking and screaming, like, I don't want to go. This is my Saturday. I want to do something else. I do not want to be down here again. The Holy Spirit shows up and is like, shut up, Katie, and trust me. And only kinder. Anyway, but they
shut up, Katie, trust me.
Yeah. So
what's wrong with me?
I don't know.
And so we'd go and we have that reflection day. And I always came away with it from that day with something to really kind of settle me back into what our purpose was.
Yeah.
And so we had journals and we would take notes and we'd go out to dinner and we'd take our journals with us into dinner and kind of unpack the day. And it was great. Those were really great.
Wow. So like
That is cool.
your diaconate formation kind of became like monthly date nights.
It really was. It really was. And it was very different than the classes because we went to classes weekly, but it was like, oh my gosh, he'd rush home from work. We are like, I've got the dinner in the car. We are out the door because it's in traffic, 2 hours.
Right.
You know,
because for those of you who don't know, this is down in like by IKEA.
Right.
Like I-10 and
stop
610.
at many times. Very handy.
Oh, man.
I
love that Flügenbürgen. It's the best
Very
set
nice.
of drawers I've ever
they
bought.
have really good Swedish meatballs.
They do.
Anyway, but yes, so
Lingonberry.
in traffic, you never know what you're going to get. You can get down there an hour or two. So we'd be running down there and you go to class and you're there for almost 3 hours.
Yeah.
And you're driving home at 10:30 at night.
I really hope that like and I know the diocese has discussed this. So if anyone is like listening at the diocese, but like maybe some telecommuting for future deacons could be a good thing, like it's a big diocese.
Yeah.
Well, they are breaking open the old Zoom classes right now. So our very own Christine Marlowe, who was on 2 episodes ago, she takes some classes at the seminary with deacons, the deacons in formation.
Well, and then of course St. Thomas University is opening up in Conroe this year.
So cool.
So if that kind of expands, maybe it'll be available. But
listen to the Holy Spirit. Let them telecommute.
It's actually a really good point, and it's kind of funny. We'll see some of these things probably come out of COVID that we didn't expect.
Yeah.
Right? Saying, can we do it?
Yeah.
Now they're trying to figure out if they can in fact do it. But I mean, we had a long trip just because we're pretty far out. But there was a couple from Conroe.
Yeah.
So he would work in Houston every day, drive all the way home to get her. Drive all the way back down there and then drive all the way home.
That's
my husband just works locally, so he would take his 10-minute commute.
He
home.
I mean, that's a lot of driving.
And
I would not.
There were couples from Texas.
Honey, you're
Texas
meeting me
City,
there.
But yeah, there were couples from Texas City.
Yeah.
I mean,
you're all over. It's crazy.
And then you'd have the people go, "Oh yeah, we're just 10 minutes away." I'm like, I don't even want to talk to you.
You want to get choked today?
Yeah.
Okay, so I have another question, and I feel like it was inspired by God because as we're recording this, there's like tornadoes outside.
Yes.
And I saw a bolt of lightning right as I thought of it. And I'm going to take that as like that light bulb. Weirdest Christmas present Deacon Mike's ever given you?
Weirdest Christmas
Yeah.
present?
Or you're like, what the heck?
Right.
I was going to say worst, but I don't want to cause like angst and disappointment for Deacon Mike. So I'm going to go with weirdest.
Weirdest. Okay. See,
Could be a
this
birthday
is hard
present.
because this is actually really hard because I honestly don't think I could tell you a gift that anybody's gotten me. I just don't remember.
Oh, that's fair. Okay. All right. That wasn't a good question.
I put a lot of thought into gifts I give, and I tend to not. And people mostly give
Weirdest
me chocolate.
gift you've ever given.
And we don't buy each other gifts for Christmas anymore. We go shopping.
Yeah.
So
it's kind of hard to buy gifts when you can just buy stuff yourself.
I tell you what,
I don't care.
Father Kingsley was a lot easier to play 20 questions with.
Sorry. Weirdest gift I've ever gotten him. I don't know about weirdest.
What about socks that are after the saints, like my St. Benedict socks? Can you get, can you get a shot of my Benny socks? Look at my Benedict socks.
Oh my gosh,
Jay.
You just yelled in the microphone.
Who needs a thunderstorm?
Holy Moses.
I am the storm.
Woo! Okay. No, we have kind of a funny story. So Mike is kind of a techno person. He really does enjoy technology. And
techno music. Go on.
Maybe not so much. But many, many years ago, I'm showing my age. There were these new things called flash drives.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I remember those.
He really wanted one. And so I think Office Depot was the only place that sold it. And I spent a fortune on a a flash drive. I think 4
it was
megabytes.
Like
4 megabytes. It probably was. It was so expensive. And he was just like, he was thrilled. He was just like, I can take this everywhere.
Yeah.
I get to, look, because
it holds 4 floppy disks.
that's right.
4 floppy
I don't have to
disks.
use floppy disks anymore. So
I
that
got
was
a backup
that was
Windows
really,
3.1 on here.
it was pretty exciting stuff. So I don't know if that's not the
That's
weirdest,
awesome.
but we laugh about it now. We're like, my gosh, how expensive. They give them away now for like
Oh
candy.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
You know
yeah.
what's funny about your thing about the date night stuff that I think is so great? So me and my wife, because of the whole quarantine, we're not going out to restaurants and getting that private time. So I put my kids to bed early on trumped up charges. Pro parent tip. Oh, this room isn't as straightened as it should be. To bed 15 minutes early. So they're out like a light. We start some Netflix movie or whatever. But lately I said, you know what? We're reviewing all the marriage prep curriculum, and I found this wonderful series from evangelical pastor Andy Stanley. And it's called What Every Happy
Andy Stanley is from?
Atlanta,
Just
where you're from. Yay.
Oh.
Hey, my son was born there.
Hey.
Gosh, I'm
Support.
surrounded by him. It's gross.
Oh wait, that's right. Hold on, time out. Deacon Mike went to Georgia Tech, didn't he?
Okay.
I did not even intend to wear my Georgia Bulldog
Yes.
shirt today, but I know that it was inspired by God because this is God's favorite team.
Stephen, wear the shirt for
As
the Bulldogs.
G for God.
Whatever.
G for
Yeah.
God.
Sorry. All right. I digress.
vengeance.
Go
No,
on.
he went to A&M and he went to Georgia Tech for his
yeah.
grad. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like so
yes,
many
we
people
were-
do.
we were in
Anywho, back to
Atlanta.
me and my killer story. So Andy Stanley. So we watched these videos on marriages on
I forgot to
what-
tell you were on the Gomer show
Yeah.
today. It's really about him.
on no, it's about your t-shirt. Anywho, on what every happy couple knows. But the whole point was like you're doing all this theology, you listen to all this stuff, but it actually drums up a ton of reflection. And so it's funny because we didn't want to do it because we knew we would talk for so long after. But once we did it, we were like, that was really good. Because you knew you were going to have a more, a deeper conversation. So
Mhm.
we'd watch it on YouTube, turn the TV off, do a shot of whiskey, and then we would have a conversation about what matters most.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it does. I mean, we found that too when we were in ministry several years before we started diaconate formation. We had made a decision that if we were doing ministry in church, we were going to do it together.
Nice.
Because at that time, all 5 kids were still at home and we had no time. We had no time to go on dates. So we're like, if we're going to do something at church, let's do it together. And one of those ministries was teaching, doing witness talks for natural family planning.
Oh, very cool.
And we always found out, if we came and we taught the class, we worked through theology of the body, we talked to these couples and everything. It was like, okay, yeah. Because you felt rebonded and you kind of reasserted what your marriage is all about. So it was a good thing. So the diaconate formation was really a carryover of that. When you get when you go
Yeah.
deep, it's like it opens things up.
Pro
Much better
and-
than watching a Marvel movie.
What was your
I don't know if
favorite?
that's
What was your favorite class in diaconate formation?
Ooh.
Probably philosophy where you creamed them.
No, and actually I have to put a little star by that because that was one of the intro classes and it was not a full-fledged, university class. But our teacher, I remember him saying, okay, we had to write a final paper explaining a philosopher's thought. So I did Aristotle and he gave us instructions and he said, don't try to be smart. No problem. So it was kind of like,
problem.
no problem.
Nailed
He's
it.
like, yep. He was like, just
Me like
give me-
Aristotle.
Give me. Okay, it's a little bit better than that. But yeah, but the idea was, just give me the basics.
Yeah,
Give
don't
me, so
overthink
you can
it.
explain this to someone else. And that was really the point of the whole diaconal training was you're going to be in the parish. You don't need to be explaining higher
level philosophy,
you're not teaching
yeah.
a grad class. You
Right.
want to go out into the parish and help the people,
Right.
kind of understand their faith a little bit better. So you have to be able
Well,
to.
and
Forget the people.
isn't the diaconate's focus on the outreach kind of arm of the church? Isn't that one of the things that's like the main focus of the diaconate?
Yeah. So
Serve.
deacons are basically waiters.
Yep.
We joke about it. When you read the reading from Acts about what they're supposed to do, they're serving at table. So their whole role is really service. So I think a lot of times in church, we see the deacon in the role at the liturgy,
Right.
and so, but that is the small part of
Yep.
their ministry. And actually some deacons in parishes, just depending on the pastor, they're not allowed to give homilies.
Yeah.
and it's up to the pastor's discretion. People don't realize
Absolutely.
that.
They're given faculties. So their abilities within the diocese are their faculties for the
Mhm.
deacons, but the pastor can decide which faculties you exercise at your parish. So a lot of the people will not hear the deacons give a homily or anything like that. And so really to understand what their ministry is, it's a lot in the background.
Sure.
So it's, preparing people for marriage, baptizing babies,
Funerals,
graveside services, or the vigil the night before a funeral. Just kind of, they're not really counselors, but just talking to people when they want to work through something, and just being in service. And they also have, in addition to their parish, they have a diocesan ministry that they all have, because really they're pledging obedience to the bishop, and they belong to the bishop, and they're loaned out to the parishes.
Yeah.
So each of the deacons also have something that they have to do for the diocese on a weekly basis. So for Mike, he works with special youth services, which is incarcerated youth.
Yeah.
But there are lots of different things.
I did
they
not
can
know
do.
this. That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's awesome. I was actually talking to a deacon the other day, and I said, would you think of what I do? Because I, on the side give talks and all this stuff. He said, would you think that it'd be good for me to become a deacon? And he said, why? And I said, well, I'd have a lot more freedom. And they said, what do you mean by that? And I said, well, I'd be able to speak at masses when I do parish missions, because I could do homilies and stuff. The guy goes, oh, if you're looking for freedom, do not become a deacon.
No.
You don't belong to yourself. You belong to the bishop.
You do.
And if the bishop says you travel for work, you'll travel for your diaconate services. And I never even realized that level of it. And it's funny, the way the deacons were inserted into the liturgy was through the service, because what happened was in the early church, there were two tables. One was the altar, and the other one was the table where it's also where the collection comes from and all that. They would bring food to distribute to the poor. And after the consecration of the Eucharist, they would then bless the food. In the earliest church, the Apostolic Church, they would have a meal right after Mass called the agape meal. But then it became, you would just have the Mass, and then the priest would bless the food, and the deacons would be sent out right then. He would take the food in baskets and take them immediately out and serve the poor. And that's how that evolved to eventually he became a function within the Mass as a, liturgical, almost like a liturgical assistant, or as one bishop said, a potted plant holder. But there are some dioceses that don't
remember. There is a friend of Mike's who calls it like deacon of the liturgical ornament or something. Yeah.
But there are the diocese of, I think Lincoln, Nebraska does not do deacon ordination.
The late Deacon Mike Mims, he used to always say that to me. He's like, I don't enjoy deacons that well, I don't know that he would say this. Well, he would say this. It was Mike Mims. He was like, I didn't become a deacon to dress up and play deacon. Like, I became a deacon to serve. And that was so indicative of his life, because he was always so action oriented, which I think caught a lot of people off guard, but it's what a lot of people loved about him. And I see so much of that in so many of our other deacons here. That's been such a charism, whether it's been Deacon McNair or Deacon Krall or, whoever, they're all very action oriented like that, which is awesome.
Service, all about service.
But to your point though, like my father-in-law is the first deacon his parish has ever had.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and it's interesting because the pastor, he's an older Irish priest, and I don't know why, but I just think I don't think the pastor ever wanted deacons at his parish, and
sure.
I guess my father-in-law is a different breed. I don't know, but
I do think it's great that your husband has said that. Now you've been on the show twice. Your husband has said, I want to go on the show. That's my life goal. And I love that we're talking about the diaconate with you and not with him. It makes me feel better.
It does.
I really, when you asked me to come on, I'm like, I can't say no twice before he even gets on once.
Yeah, well,
the competition continues.
We just like talking to you more.
Yeah.
So I hope
we get to hear him all the time.
We do.
Right?
Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
We're giving a voice to the voiceless.
No, really, I do not. I will say one thing: when we went through formation and we came out of it, especially as we approached his ordination, he had a very defined set of things that he was going to do upon ordination. And so for the women, a lot of us were just asking, what are we supposed to do? I remember asking that question very early on. And Deacon Gerald DuPont was the director at the time of the diaconate formation. And I said, well, what's expected of the wives? And he's like, well, what is God asking of you, Katie? And so that kind of stuck with me. When we came to the end, it's kind of like, we don't have that defined role. But now we have all this crazy education and formation. What are we going to do with it? And so in some ways, it was exciting to have this big open, field to go into. And in other ways, it was kind of like, where do I start? So, I mean, I remember even having a meeting with you and saying, look, I'm an educated person now looking for a ministry.
Right.
So it's kind of like, it just, That's how it works.
And I probably gave you
So-
some lame answer because I didn't know what to tell you. So
You're
she's
like, well,
saying yes.
We can
yes.
start a CrossFit.
Yeah.
box.
No, that is not what I said to her.
Not at all. No, but it's really but it
Maybe
is
we should,
funny,
though.
and it's not like I'm an expert on anything. Although sometimes people do approach me like I know, no, but you do want to use your gifts too, because you do. I'm very grateful for the education that I received.
Use it or lose it.
There. All kidding aside, there are some great people down at the seminary teaching, and they have so much wisdom and just a lot of things to share. So I'm very grateful for that.
Good.
And
that's awesome.
So on that note, the last time we actually had you on the podcast pre-video, this was
the dark days.
The dark days. This was like last year, I think. We had you and
before
Roger,
YouTube.
We had you and Roger
dear.
Ingersoll on to talk about the new ministry, Care for Creation, that you guys were getting started. So since that is an area that has kind of become a part of your mission field, give us an update. Like, I know last week was Laudato Si week because it was the 5th anniversary of Pope Francis's encyclical Laudato Si.
Yes.
Remind me what Laudato Si means again.
Like, we praise you. Lauds.
We
like,
praise you. Okay.
It
That's
comes
right,
from
because
the-
encyclicals are
creation
always
praising.
just the first line of the encyclical.
Yeah, but he chose that's the first line of the hymn of St. Francis on creation. So
Right.
Gotcha. Okay.
What's the first words? You got the encyclical right there.
I have to put my
Drum
glasses
roll,
on.
please. I got my
Laudato
glasses already
Si.
on. I can hook you up, sister. Let me serve you as you serve our parish community.
Thank you, Gomer.
Laudato Si, mi signor. Literally, it's in Italian. Praise be to you, my Lord. So
There you go.
lauds, laudato.
Got
praise.
it. Okay.
What's nice about
Louds to be.
Someone get him. Does anyone have a
Amen.
face mask? Can we muzzle this
I
guy?
do.
I brought a mask.
Thank
No.
you.
No, but really, Laudato Si, it's a culmination of church teaching on just caring for the world and caring for the poor.
Right.
And so it's interesting that it does start with a prayer from St. Francis, because it really, starts with him and continues through time and touches on different things that different popes have spoken about, Pope Paul VI and Pope Benedict XVI and Pope John Paul II.
Yeah, I think the last time we talked about this, one of the things that we kind of alluded to, and I still think it's definitely still relevant a year later, is just the idea that whenever you start talking about Care for Creation or Laudato Si, there's this automatic political thing that happens, because people think that if you're for the green movement and that sort of stuff, then you're this way or that way. And what I found is that's not really true, and that's really not the goal of Laudato Si or what Pope Francis is trying to teach us about our Care for Creation. These are just common sense steps that we should all be taking to appreciate what God has given us. And I think that the thing that I found is the more I dive into it, if I do the little things like recycling or, being conscious of not waste in the physical world, it tends to have the same impact on my spiritual life, where I don't, waste my time with God or on frivolous things, or I appreciate, things in my life in a different way that maybe I've been taking for granted for a while. And that it's all tied together. So I don't know, speak to that, just kind of like what have you seen people kind of growing through the ministry that way that you guys have started with Care for Creation, or where are y'all at a year or two into this now?
Yeah, so we started last summer is the first time that we got together with this group, and really the whole point was to be supportive to the staff and clergy at St. Anthony's, to say, if you have an idea, we'll try to figure out a way to implement that. We've had lots of like, hey, do you want to find out a better way to deal with waste after an event? Do you want to, and so we're kind of willing to do the legwork and maybe put some ideas out there and just kind of get the word out. But it's, I think you're right. I think I said this too last time I was on here. This is not political. It's not political at all. It's, if anything, it's part of our faith. It's so much more than that. And part of what Laudato Si talks about, like there's an intro and like 6 parts to it. One of it talks about, having a dialogue politically.
Right.
But most of it is about a change of heart for ourselves, realizing what's going on, recognizing that the first person always affected is the poor.
Right.
Always. And that,
when me and Roger Ingersoll did presentations at the seminary on it, my whole approach to it was Okay, so a lot of conservative Catholics, of which I would probably put myself in that category pretty hardcore, are nervous about something like this because the environmental issue is always on the left, right? It's always seemingly
in America, at least.
in America, right?
Yeah.
It's and the Democratic Party definitely seized on it in order to engage in restrictions against business, and it's always this war against the environment and business. It's always couched in these terms. And the thing that I love about Laudato Si is he places it within what I would call an adequate theology of creation. What does God reveal about creation? Right? What does God reveal about Adam and Eve and the dominion that humanity has over creation? Because the word dominion is used, right? It's our regal authority, while at the same time, it's very clearly not ours, right? So if you have $1,000, you're probably going to treat it differently than if I gave you $1,000 and said, this is my money, I want you to use it well. And you can look at the parable of the talents and all this stuff. It's the idea of stewardship. This isn't mine. It's been entrusted to me. Yes. I have to return it better than I found it. And then when you get to the book of Revelation, what do you find? Well, the book of Genesis starts with the marriage. The book of Revelation ends with the marriage supper of the Lamb. But what do you discover? You discover a new heavens and a new earth. And people have this weirdo Platonic view of Christianity where it's like we're a bunch of trapped spirits that when our body dies, we shoot up into heaven. That's not Christianity.
Yeah.
Right? But that's not Christianity.
Well, I'm out.
We are I'm done. If it ain't Platonic, I don't want it. You see how I had to stretch that word?
Yeah.
But the idea is that we're embodied beings, that creation we are rational animals. That's our definition as human beings in the church. And the idea of the future resurrection of the dead. But the book of Revelation is the new heavens descending, not us going up. It's the new heavens descending to the new earth that's been repristinated.
You mean I'm not going to get wings?
No. I'm going to ring so many bells, ain't nothing going to happen. We don't become angels, people. Angels are entirely different beings.
Way smarter.
Yeah. So the beautiful thing about Laudato Si is that it's situated within that understanding, the biblical account of creation, which is under attack today. Evolutionary side, the fundamentalist Christian side, like they're losing. We tend to take a modern American approach, but the problem is it's bought from principles and this is what appealed to the seminarians. I said, the problems in creation that we have right now with pollution, all that stuff, were built on principles of the Enlightenment, which rejected Catholicism.
Right.
Like, I mean, it was an explicit rejection of Aristotle. It was an explicit rejection of Thomas Aquinas, like explicitly, so that we could turn nature into a mechanism and make that mechanism do whatever the heck we wanted. And now we look at it and we're like, wow, when we took ownership of it, we destroyed it. The response is stewardship. I don't know why I felt like I had to get so angry for 5 minutes.
No,
okay.
it was really good, actually.
Chapter 3, Laudato Si.
Well, but really, and the Pope's talking in here too, not that technology is bad, but there's a certain nobility that goes along with the use of it.
Right.
You know, I think he calls it a noble use of technology.
Yeah, it's a subsection called technology, creativity, and power.
Also, I think one of the things that people forget about Pope Francis is that while he's the Pope and the Bishop of Rome, he came from the edge of the world that has been very negatively impacted in a lot of ways by a lack of the care for creation. And I actually went to Argentina in 2015, had always wanted to go there, kind of had this like romanticized version of what I thought it was going to be, because you hear about Buenos Aires and all this. And it was a beautiful city in a lot of ways, but I was dumbfounded by the poverty that surrounds Buenos Aires.
Shocking.
It is. There's no way around it.
The only place that is close to that here is like an Indian reservation where there's no
maybe, but there's so much more people because it's so condensed.
Yeah.
And then going to World Youth Day in Brazil. When his first World Youth Day in 2013 and going, we actually did a Life Teen event in a favela, and it was just the whole thing of like, I've been to other parts of Latin America, but it was just so much more exacerbated because of the amount of people that are in these countries. And yet the poverty is still there because of this lack of care for creation. So I think that when you start to understand how he was formed and what, where he was a priest and where he was a seminarian and where he grew up, it makes sense that he's trying to bring this to the attention of the world, and it's important. And I think we need to listen.
And it's interesting too, because he's really the first pope in a long time that comes from that very different background.
Yeah.
So, you know, we're kind of brought up on one kind of theology. He's dealing with a completely different, you know, so we can say we've seen poverty, but
not like they have.
No.
Yeah.
We can say we've seen sickness, but not like in other countries.
One
And
of
so,
my-
you know, when you want to feel for, when we say, yes, we care about the poor, we're very removed for it. It's very hard to really take that to heart when it's not on our doorstep. And so I can understand a lot better where
and
he's
the
coming
Franciscan impulse that I love, and the Franciscan Friars of the Renewal let Mother Teresa kind of show the way. One of the reasons why he chose Francis, and a repeated theme, is a poor church for the poor, like to love and serve the poor. Why the poor? Jesus says, at the end of time, I'll separate the sheep from the goats. What separates them? When I was hungry, you fed me. Well, when did we see you hungry, Lord? When you met me in the least of my brothers. So Jesus has sheep and goats, but he identifies with the poor. And that's St. Francis of Assisi's mode, right? He saw the poor Christ, right? Though he was rich, became poor for our sake, so that by his poverty we might become rich. So what did he do? Francis was literally rich, stripped himself completely naked in the town square in front of the bishop and his dad, and he said, I have no father except our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. And he went and he took the clothes of a beggar, gave them the rich clothes of a merchant, and that became the habit, essentially, a little modified form of that. And the amazing thing is, Francis, and then the CFR Franciscans, which I love with all my heart, their whole thing is we built programs for the poor, the Franciscans did, but we lost touch with them. So as the CFRs, part of their thing is we can never lose touch. We can build a ministry, great. We can build a halfway house. We can build a soup kitchen, but we have to be the ones serving the food. We can't just administratively run it. And that was inspired by Mother Teresa. Well, that's the mode of Pope Francis. It's not enough to say, well, you know, we're going to give money to the poor. It's like, but go be with the poor.
That's what I love about the Honduras mission here at St. Anthony of Padua is that there's not many, maybe not, I don't know. I don't want to criticize other parishes. There's a lot of parish missions out there, and they're all good and they're well intended, and not even just Catholic parishes, church parish missions. Honduras is unique in that since it began, it's always been about going and being with those people and being a part of their lives and building up their community.
I have not.
And you know, making and that's why there's grades being added to the schools there because of the work that happens with the parishioners here at St. Anthony of Padua and building the relationships with the local you know, municipalities as well as the bishop and
getting a road made so it takes 15 minutes to get to the top instead of
I mean, it's
2 hours.
It's crazy what is, and people don't even realize that that's happening in our parish through the work of the Honduras mission. It's incredible, and it really is, I think, what this idea of being with the poor is all about, is not just being with them to make it a spectacle or so that you have something to put on your Facebook or Instagram feed.
Which one of these is not like the other as I'm hugging the little children?
Yeah. Which, I mean, I'm guilty of it. I've been on mission trips
right.
before.
That's what do you call that? Toxic missions, right?
Oh, yeah. Toxic charity.
And here's an interesting fact. So when I do the formation part, they give me a 10-minute spiel for the missionaries before they go. And my big thing is, this is not paternalism. This isn't us rich, healthy people going to the poor, sick people and fixing everything. It's us to be with them. JP2 says, no one is so rich that he has nothing to receive, nor so poor that he has nothing to give. And when you go there,
that is so true.
Right?
That's
Isn't that awesome?
Quote.
But the problem is when we think the paternalism or the toxic missional thing is, well, I'm coming to do my program. I don't care what you need. And the amazing thing is, like, we can invest in infrastructure, right? And that's a large part of what Pope Francis is saying in Laudato Si. It's like, the infrastructure that we take for granted in the so-called first world, it's sometimes it comes at the expense of people in the third world.
Sure.
And we neglect some of these things. And once we start channeling, like when the rich and the poor come together, that's Christian community.
Well, and we often call that solidarity with the poor too.
Yeah.
I mean, that phrase, that's what it comes from. It's not me fixing your problems. And I saw that too with our mission to Haiti for years. You know, we had a Life Team mission to Haiti. And after years of doing that, they stopped going, which, you know, made one of my kids really sad who wanted to go.
Yeah.
But the reason we stopped going is because it had become basically self-sufficient.
Right,
They didn't
right.
need outside missionaries to come down there, which is amazing.
Yeah.
That's exactly what you were trying to accomplish.
You got to love the toxic missions. There's a book called this where these African kids were rubbing rocks and dirt on the side of their school walls, and the youth minister went early. It's like, what are you guys doing? And they're like, our teacher says that Americans love painting, so we have to ruin the paint so that you can come and paint. And they're like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So the guys start doing all this research, and he's like, oh, what have we done?
Oh, I mean, yeah. Or you hear
Yeah.
these stories where they'll go and you take a group of high schoolers down, and then after they leave, then the real local workers come in and fix everything that you messed up.
Yeah.
And it's like, so you have to be really careful about
You
these
do.
type of
You do.
mission organizations and where you're going. Like the one that I've always been involved in, we tried to take kids from here. We were very close. And then a month before we were supposed to depart, when I was youth minister here, to go to the mustard seed communities in Kingston, Jamaica, because there was violence that year,
Yeah.
right
That was
outside.
bad.
Right,
That was
that's
bad.
So we had to
right.
cancel the mission. So many disappointing kids, but I love the mustard seed communities because they're in Kingston, they're in the Dominican Republic, they're in Nicaragua,
Mhm.
I think they're in Zimbabwe. But their whole thing is what they're doing is they're taking in children that are orphaned because they have disabilities, which often in poor societies are the first that are neglected. They're born, they're deformed. You go in the trash can, sometimes literally.
Right.
And so Monsignor, who started this, he would go and literally find these kids. It started in Kingston, Jamaica, which is one of the most dangerous poor cities in the Western Hemisphere. But it's grown to all these countries where the same problem is happening. He'd find these kids and he'd bring them in. And then he would bring the outside missionaries in to literally build the schools, the homes, and to take care of the kids. And part of the whole process was, it wasn't just that you were down there building for these kids, but part of the daily process and routine was taking these kids in their, that are, paraplegic, in their wheelchairs or whatever it is, into adoration in the morning, doing mass
wow.
with
How
them,
cool is that?
then feeding them, bathing them, and then during the day you did the work and you would take breaks in between, and so there's this whole kind of comprehensive aspect to caring for the poor that I think, comes out in Laudato Si. It comes out, and the way we get to practice that in our daily life, because we can't always be on mission trip necessarily unless we're called to that vocation, is through recycling, being conscientious of how we're using things, that sort of thing.
And-
So if you have a ministry in the church,
Mhm.
they can contact you
Yes.
for Care of Creation. And what do you
Yes.
do for them?
So they're welcome to come and join. We have a monthly meeting usually, kind of formulating new ideas. Like I said, we're working with different people in the parish. We've met with Janine Braun about, have set by some ideas for, events that we're not having right now. But when we go back to having
One
events,
day,
Right.
one
you know,
day.
for doing different things. But
Yeah.
Janine is great. She has so many good ideas to begin with. But just being kind of available as a resource and educating people about this, because like you're talking about, I think we're often looking for different ways to serve. Especially, you see what's going on with the food pantry, right? Everybody's like, yes, I can donate food
Right.
because I know I'm helping somebody. It's a direct link, and or somebody wants to help with Habitat for Humanity or something like that, because
Yeah.
you see the fruit of your labor. But I think that we do have to start to look in other ways, that sometimes our daily choices are our ways of being
Right.
mission, or enriching our faith in different choices that we make. So it's
Didn't youth ministry take one of the ideas? Like they started telling kids to bring water, their
Yeah.
own reusable.
We got rid
water
of
bottles.
all water bottles.
So they-
and we just do the big jugs.
Yes.
Oh my gosh! When I thought about that,
the
for my
amount
time,
of bottles.
oh my gosh,
You
yeah.
need to do an
They used-
infographic
they
about
used
like.
to, no, I don't want to.
Siri-
We shouldn't. We should be ashamed for it, because it used to be this entire wall over here
Yes.
where you're sitting
Yes.
was water bottles and cans and all that kind of stuff.
Saved hundreds a week.
Yeah,
But here's the deal.
I
Like
mean-
this is the
and
whole
the
thing is
waste that we were putting out,
convenience.
just from
Yeah.
that
Or-
one department.
Or having to order the water and have it delivered because not one person didn't have room in their car to go
Right.
get it. So they
Right.
had to deliver it on a pallet,
right,
bring it upstairs.
just reducing the
Yeah.
footprint
I
of that.
mean,
Yeah,
That's insane.
yeah.
And
And
like
not
my
necessary. It
kids are
didn't
like,
add
I'll just drink
anything.
out of the fountain. I don't care.
Yeah, it didn't add to the ministry at all, but just over time, that was just kind
Yeah.
of the
and
thing that had happened.
And the kids were not. What was funny is that they're, I don't know. I think we underestimate our teens a lot, but I think we underestimate people.
They are dumb.
Often.
I'm just kidding.
But it was like no big deal to them.
Yeah, no.
It was just kind of like, sure, we'll
New
do
normal.
whatever.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Well, you
Well,
want me to quarantine?
Yeah.
Also-
Now, adults,
Yeah.
not so much.
Well, and also the next generation, I think, is a little bit more conscientious of the world than we
absolutely.
are.
Well, they're the ones who are going to be dealing with the aftermath when
Yeah.
we're all dead.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Speak for yourself. I'm going to live forever.
whatever. I'm
I'm
pretty sure there was a little speech on.
Yeah. I'm assuming-
Michael, you're going to die soon.
God, I hope not. Although with this weather, I'm not so sure because
Good
I'm
night.
looking
It
out
is
the window
nuts.
right now, and it basically looks
My
like
wife
Noah's
is on her
Ark
way to
out there.
Sugar Land right
Awesome.
now. Yikes.
Not a
Yeah.
good time to drive.
Fabulous.
Well,
Well,
thank you so much
yeah.
for coming on.
Thanks
this
for
was
having me.
this was our longest one, I think, so
Of
far.
course.
I apologize for the rant.
I was
going
going
to
to say, and whose fault is that, Gomer?
Yeah, no, it's totally
Did I
mine.
talk too much? No.
Yeah, but thank you, number one, for saying yes.
We'll have
to
you on
getting
it.
Married.
We'll have
Thank
you
you
on
for
it.
saying yes to coming on the show.
We'll have you on at least 4 more times before we invite
Yeah.
Deacon Mike.
That's awful.
Mostly because I don't want his amazing beard to be in competition with mine, because I would lose.
This is true.
You
I would lose like he lost to you in philosophy.
That's right.
That's what would
Remember that. Don't
So, what ministry, to close? What are you thinking about helping out with any ministry coming up?
Well,
what do you
I
wanna do?
was thinking about helping out with a ministry maybe
Say
that
it.
you were doing for
Say it.
RCIA.
Say RCIA.
That's right.
I desperately want
So,
both. I want, yeah.
no
Here you go.
No covetousness
put her on the
there at all.
spot.
No, we talked about it. It's all good. Yeah. So when things get back to the new normal,
The new normal. Yeah. Pray for our
I hate
RCIA
that
folks.
phrase,
Awaiting
but it's
baptism,
true.
confirmation,
Just,
first Holy Communion.
being a companion to the RCIA folks. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Sounds like a good plan.
All right. Well, looking at this camera over here, because that's the one Jay is pointing to. Thank you all for joining us. You can now find us on Vimeo, the old people YouTube, or YouTube, the young person's Vimeo.
We're on YouTube.
Yay! That's
Do-do-do-do.
awesome, Jay. Well done. Well done, Jay.
Yeah.
Are we going to monetize it, Jay? Get some cash money? Every 6 months, we get a check for $4.23.
What is wrong with you? It's
I got
about
problems. I'm scared of this. I'm
evangelization.
scared of this. I'm scared of this economy, man. That's what's wrong. I got 4 kids. Steven, send us out. Send us home. Our bags are packed. We got jazzercise class in a couple minutes. Send us home.
Go home. Bye, guys.
Thank you for joining.
Thanks.
Oh, that was a train wreck. Oh, you're welcome.